Sangmin's eyes widened in shock. Huh. What did you just say? He asked, his voice trembling a little. Jin-Woo smiled calmly, and repeated himself. Yojin promised me a building worth 30 billion won. Now, White Tiger's building is 50 billion won. That's only a bit more than half. But the value is so huge that I'm willing to let it go. Sangmin's jaw dropped. Did you really say 30 billion won? He exclaimed, his voice full of disbelief. Jin-Woo had only been a hunter for 4 years. And for most of that time he was just an E-rank hunter, someone nobody really paid attention to. It wasn't until recently that people started noticing him. So that probably meant Jin-Woo's second awakening hadn't happened too long ago. Just how strong was he now? If Chairman Yu, a super smart businessman, would offer him 30 billion won even before his reevaluation. Wait, is Jin-Woo faking it, since there's no way to check if this offer is real? Sangmin stared at Jin-Woo suspiciously, like he wasn't sure if Jin-Woo's telling the truth or just messing with him. Jin-Woo pulled out his phone and dialed a number quickly, almost as if he knew exactly what Sangmin was thinking. The phone rang a few times before clicking on. Yes, boss, a voice replied. It was late, and the cafe was quiet, but Jin-Woo cranked up the volume on his phone. Hey, Jin-Yo, he said. What's up, boss? Ask me anything. Sangmin gulped nervously when he heard the name Jin-Yo Yos. Was Jin-Woo about to spill their secret conversation? But then Jin-Woo threw him a curveball. By the way, what's that building you mentioned worth again? He asked. It's valued at around 30 billion won right now, Jin-Yo replied. But once construction wraps up and our guild moves in, it'll be worth way more. Right, Jin-Woo said into the phone. If you need a notarized document, I can fax it to you now. He paused, then covered the receiver with his hand, so Jin-Yu couldn't hear. Turning to Sangmin, he whispered, having trouble believing this. Want to talk to him yourself? Sangmin was sweating bullets but shook his head quickly. No, that's okay, he muttered. Gotta go, Jin-Woo said, standing up quickly. Sangmin's eyes went wide with shock. Just a moment ago, everything had been normal, but now he looked like a completely different person after that phone call. Wait, this can't be right, Sangmin muttered, staring at the phone in his hand. Eugene Construction was offering him 30 billion won as a signing bonus before the guild was even formed. And the guy on the phone was treating him with absolute respect. It didn't make sense. Sangmin's voice trembled slightly. The thing is, I'm not authorized to handle negotiations about such huge amounts of money. But if you give me some time I can talk this over with our upper management, and before he could finish, Jin-Woo interrupted him. Sangmin's shoulders slumped and he felt defeated. He thought about what had gone wrong. In the end, he realized he didn't have enough information. That's why things hadn't worked out. He'd moved too fast because of how excited he was about such a big opportunity. His eagerness had led him to make hasty, risky choices. Jin-Woo was deep in thought, wishing he had dug deeper into Yojin Construction's proposal and gone with the usual plan supported by the guild. He knew he needed to tell the guild master about this first. If Chairman Yo saw Jin-Woo as worth 30 billion won, who knows, maybe he could be worth 50 billion, or even 100 billion. It might not be too late. With the guild's help, Jin-Woo was sure they could uncover more about him and push harder. But then Jin-Woo's thoughts were interrupted. Let me ask you something, Jin-Woo said, his friendly smile gone. Sangmin looked up, surprised by the change in Jin-Woo's expression. Even though it was a warm spring night, the air suddenly felt cold. Sangmin swallowed hard, his throat dry with nervousness. Jin-Woo took a step closer and lowered his voice to a whisper. How many people know about me? Sangmin hesitated before answering. Only me, for now. I was in such a rush to try and recruit you as quickly as possible, that I didn't even have time to report to upper management. There was actually one more person who knew about this. Kichul, Sangmin's right-hand guy. Sangmin thought this might bother Jin-Woo, so he decided to keep Kichul a secret just in case. But then Jin-Woo said, let's agree not to lie to each other out of respect. Okay, Sangmin was caught off guard. What? Did he check up on us before we met? If he did, lying would just make things worse than they already were. Sangmin didn't even want to think about that possibility. I guess I have no choice but to tell him the truth. The relationship between a hunter and a guild is kinda like a celebrity and their agent. Even if a hunter didn't want to make a deal right now, staying on their good side was super important. You never know what might happen tomorrow. The second administration team had a golden rule: avoid arguments with hunters as much as possible. It could come back to haunt you. So Sangmin decided it was time to own up and confess. Honestly, someone on my team knows about you.
He admitted. Jin-Woo nodded, like he had expected this all along. It made sense. Researching and keeping an eye on him was too much for one person to handle alone. The big clue was the timing of when Sangmin had reached out to Jin-Woo.
As soon as Jin-Woo approached his house, Sangmin called him. Someone must have been keeping an eye on Jin-Woo and told Sangmin the moment they spotted him. After all, Sangmin probably wanted to talk to Jin-Woo right away without Jin-Woo finding out. One thing was for sure. It wasn't official White Tiger Guild business. Sangmin's reaction to the 50 billion won made that clear enough. He'd freaked out when the number was way higher than what he was allowed to approve on his own. Normally, if he followed the rules, he would have at least pretended to call his boss, even if he knew it wasn't going to happen. Considering everything, Jin-Woo had guessed there might be a small group of 2 or 3 people involved. Now Sangmin had confirmed that it was just 2. Thank goodness. Jin-Woo didn't want things to get too messy. But 2 people, that felt manageable. Jin-Woo had everything under control. He knew they'd keep bugging him if he didn't do something, so he decided to give them a little heads up. I'll be honest too, Jin-Woo said suddenly. I've already turned down Yojin's offer. Sangmin's eyes nearly popped out of his head. What? But before Sangmin could even process what was happening, Jin-Woo vanished into thin air. Sangmin jumped to his feet, totally freaked out. Sangmin quickly spun around, but Jin-Woo was nowhere to be seen. What's going on? Did he move so fast that I couldn't even see him? Caught off guard, Sangmin finally noticed a hand resting on his shoulder. He felt a chill run down his spine. Don't turn around, a voice said from beside him. 1 second, Jin-Woo had been sitting across from Sangmin, and the next, he was silently standing behind him. Stealth. Sangmin's palms grew sweaty. Is he mad at me? Hunters were monsters. Sangmin knew this well from working closely with them, which was why he always treated them with total respect. Now, he couldn't help but think, was all that spying and following around the point where things went too far? He should have asked the guild for backup before coming here. But how could he arrange security when he didn't even know the guy's rank? Sangmin's head felt like it was spinning and his heart raced faster with every passing second. The sound of his own breathing was super loud in Jin-Woo's ears. He said calmly, please sit down slowly. I don't want to scare you too much. Sangmin nodded hesitantly, but thought, I think it's already too late for that. As he did what Jin-Woo asked and sat down, and then Jin-Woo suddenly appeared right next to him. Sangmin understood why Jin-Woo had said those words, but his heart was still racing from the shock. The intense look in Jin-Woo's eyes as he asked his question sent chills down your spine. If Sangmin had been on the receiving end of that stare, he might have frozen in shock. Was this Jin-Woo's way of showing kindness? One thing was clear. Jin-Woo could be really intimidating. He continued speaking, drawing everyone's attention. The reason I turned down Yujin's offer is because I'm not interested in joining a guild right now. Both men kept their eyes straight ahead, avoiding each other as they talked. I see, Jin-Woo said quietly. He paused for a moment before adding, I'd also rather keep my identity private. It was a simple request. He didn't want to join a guild and preferred to keep a low profile. Sangmin caught on right away, but there was still something he was curious about. If I may ask, Sangmin said, why are you working with Gino? He's helping me with something personal, Jin-Woo replied. No one else knew about my return, and I trust him like a friend. That's why I asked for his help. Jin-Woo paused, and his next words felt heavier, like a challenge. If people start talking about me behind my back, can I assume you or your team will take full responsibility? Manager N. Even though Jin-Woo had already let go, Sangmin could feel the weight of his warning pressing down harder on his shoulders. This wasn't just an empty threat. Sangmin couldn't explain how he knew, but he was sure Jin-Woo could cause a lot of trouble if he wanted to. My gut feeling about people is usually right, Jin-Woo said quietly. He had been through some terrifying life-or-death situations before, and that gave him an air of confidence and danger that made Sangmin take him very seriously. You know how people say, what happens in a dungeon stays in a dungeon. But here's the thing, Jin-Woo was down there with his stealth skill, and let me tell you, that skill can be super tricky. If someone with stealth is careful, they could get away with almost anything. The security cameras, guards, and alarms didn't stand a chance. Sangmin wiped the sweat trickling down his face, nervous but thrilled. Who knew he had such an amazing skill called stealth? It was something really special. That's why Eugene offered him a whopping 30 billion only because they were sure they'd get something out of it. Badump badump, Sangmin's heart pounded with excitement, even though he was scared. Rest assured, Sangmin said firmly, your secret is safe with me. Don't worry, my assistant Kichul will also keep it under wraps. Sangmin preferred keeping things quiet anyway. Why share info about Jin-Woo when he could take all the credit for discovering such a talented agent? Plus, there was no point in risking competitors finding out. But honestly, the main reason was simpler. Sangmin didn't want Jin-Woo as an enemy. I'll hold you to that, Manager N, Jin-Woo replied before vanishing from his seat. Sangmin looked around, taking in the cozy cafe. It felt like he had stepped into another world. He couldn't believe his eyes and could only press a hand against his racing heart to calm down. Then, Kachul burst through the door. He had been watching Sangmin and Jin-Woo from outside. When Jin-Woo vanished, Kachul rushed in, looking worried. Manager Ann, are you okay? Did something go wrong with the negotiations? Sangmin's face was pale. His hands trembled as he pulled out a cigarette and lit it. Kachul, he said, his voice shaking. This is way bigger than we thought. They had to find a way to bring this man on board, no matter what it took. His mind kept looping around that one thought, but luckily the chance was still there. Then Kachul tugged gently on his wrist, snapping him back to reality.
Mister,
he said softly. Sangmin turned to him just as he was about to light up.
He asked.
Kachul glanced around nervously and whispered, you can't smoke here. It's a non-smoking area. Sangmin squished the cigarette in his hand. Whoa, Jin-Woo couldn't wait to check his stats as soon as he got home. He pulled up his stat window, and there it all was. Name: Ipchim Woo Sung. Job: Ipchim None for now. Ipchim Woo Sung. Solblis. Frat. Solblis. 39 up a whopping 12 levels from 27. Talk about a jump. Ipchim Woos. Essen sounds super cool, right? Ipchim Woo 638. Saw stats. Thumbs. Strength: 97 super strong. Stamina: 59 he can keep going for a while. Abshamudi: 97 lightning fast moves. Intelligence: 51 getting smarter all the time. Perception: 81 keen senses, always alert. Skills: Abshamu still, Abshamu still, Amu still, and mystery. Willpower LV 1. Advanced dagger wielding LV. Umpon's active skills: Abshamu son, like a pro. Murderous intent LV 1. Intimidating presence, fatal strike LV 1. Lens, deadly hits. Abshamus, cobbling him out, big time. No wonder people are starting to notice Jin-Woo now. Leveling up 12 levels in one go. That's no small feat. It's been a while since his levels shot up like this. Or since his very first dungeon where he jumped from level 1 all the way to 17. Back then, he was still pretty low level, but this recent progress was on a whole new level. It showed how many dungeons he'd blasted through in just a few days. Can you believe it? In just 4 days of raiding with Genio, we've cleared a whopping 9 dungeons. And here's the kicker, every single one was a tough C-ranked dungeon. Those are the highest level challenges that most players can't tackle alone. They were moving so fast, it was crazy. This speed was even starting to worry hunters in the area, who relied on those same dungeons to make a living. Jinhyo had the best view of this wild scene, and could only sit there stunned, as Jin-Woo tore through these dungeons at a pace that left everyone amazed. Sure. Here's the rewritten text. As Jin-Woo's level went up, he could finish dungeons faster. He gained 12 levels in just 9 raids, which means he was leveling up about once per raid. With 10 more dungeons left, he'd easily pass level 45, by the time he finished all 19 raids. Back when he was around level 25, he managed to beat a B-rank hunter. Now, he had no idea how strong he really was. Jin-Woo placed his hand on his chest, and felt his racing heartbeats thump. Thanklade stronger was such an exciting feeling, something he never could have imagined before. Who knew exploring gates and conquering dungeons could be so thrilling? It's because Jin-Woo gets to see how much stronger he becomes each time. Every time he levels up or his skills improve, he notices real changes after each adventure. Now Jin-Woo feels like a true hunter, making hunting the perfect way to describe his journey. There's wisdom among hunters, that finding the next spot is as important as the hunt itself. Jin-Woo's next target is already set. The demon's castle. He first stepped into this dungeon at level 21, and has since leveled up nearly 20 times. He felt ready to face whatever was next, but then he remembered Cerberus, the huge three-headed dog guarding the gates. That made him hesitate. What if I swing open those castle doors and get mobbed by a bunch of monsters? The thought sent shivers down his spine. Maybe his stealth skill could help him slip away without being noticed, but he wasn't sure it would work for sure. Even if you're super lucky 10 times in a row, one wrong move can mean death. That's why Jin-Woo never took chances. She wanted to be 100% certain he could take down a bunch of monsters as strong as Cerberus at the same time. The name Cerberus glowed red, and the color told you how tough it was. The only time Jin-Woo had ever seen a monster with a red name was at Demon's Castle. Usually monsters in instance dungeons like the one from today's Murray department store were pretty weak. But something about this felt off. Was he forgetting something? Jin-Woo scratched his head, trying to figure out why this monster stood out. Something didn't add up. He knew he was missing something, but what? He couldn't remember any other red-named monsters besides the one in Demon's Castle. Wait, there had to be another. If he'd met a monster with a red name before, especially at a lower level, it would have been a big deal. Then it hit him. The penalty quest. Those massive venomous centipedes in the desert had red names too. They were called poison-toothed giant desert centipedes. He hadn't made the connection back then because he was still figuring out how the game worked. Now that he thought about it, if he could take down those centipedes without a sweat, maybe Demon's Castle wasn't so scary after all. That realization boosted his confidence. More than one centipede meant he could see if he could handle them working together. But how to get there? Skipping the daily quest seemed the only way. Whether he did the penalty quest or the daily one, the points were the same, no big deal either way. He'd head to the penalty zone tomorrow. It was pretty funny since he barely survived last time. He wondered if they'd drop any cool items or extra experience points. A grin started spreading across his face until something caught his attention. A presence stepping out of the elevator down the hall. The soft footsteps outside the door were super familiar to Jin-Woo. It was his sister Gina. It was exactly 11 p.m. The time she usually came home. Jin-Woo quickly stood up before she could even start digging through her pocket for the key. Click. The sound of the door unlocking made Gina let out a playful ooh. At first, when Jin-Woo started opening the door before she could even find her key, it would scare her. But now she was totally used to it. If there's one thing humans are good at, it's adapting. I'm home, Gina said, as she walked in the door. Welcome back, her brother replied. Gina headed to her room, and Jin-Woo turned to lock the door behind her. Then he heard her voice again. Hey Jin-Woo? Gina poked her head out of her room. Do you have any days off this week? She asked. What for? Jin-Woo wondered. My homeroom teacher wants to have a parent-teacher meeting. Gina explained, looking a bit worried, as if it was something important. A parent-teacher meeting. Since Gina was a senior, her teacher was probably busy helping students figure out their plans for the future. Jin-Woo really didn't want to go to the meeting, but his friend Jinyo didn't help him get out of it. Jin-Woo tried to use his busy schedule as an excuse, but no luck, he had a free day after all. Thanks a lot, Jin-Woo muttered under his breath. After thinking about it for a bit, he finally texted back, Thursday. Really? That's awesome. Jin-Woo's face lit up like a light bulb. She was so excited that Jin-Woo could tell she was just 1 second away from throwing her arms around him in a big hug. He quickly waved his hands to stop her. Jin-Woo rolled her eyes and walked back into her room, leaving Jin-Woo to let out a deep sigh. Ugin. This week was turning out to be a total nightmare. Non-stop raids, trips to the penalty zone, and now a parent-teacher meeting in 2 days. Jin-Woo groaned as he headed out early. Today was packed. Jinyo had lined up 4 dates for him, probably trying to make up for taking it easy tomorrow. But hey, if Jin-Woo was clearing dungeons as fast as he had been lately, 4 or 5 in one day, piece of cake. Bring it on. The bigger issue, it was super rare for multiple C-rank gates to pop up so close together. But today, Lady Luck was smiling on them. Jin-Woo strutted up to his apartment entrance, feeling pretty good about life. But as he approached the usual spot where Jinhyo's van would be parked, something felt off. Instead of the van, he noticed a suspicious guy in a suit sneaking around. ETS. If it weren't for yesterday's drama, Jin-Woo might have brushed it off. I thought I made things clear. His eyes locked onto the man, and his mind went on high alert. Oh, something wasn't right here. He checked his watch and didn't even notice Jin-Woo coming up until the hunter stepped into his space. Excuse me, Jin-Woo said quietly. The man jumped, startled. Hejin-sung, he stammered, looking like he'd just seen a ghost. Jin-Woo raised an eyebrow and tutted softly. Are you from the White Tiger Guild? Hey, I'm Kachul Hayan from the White Tiger Guild's second admin team, he said with a smile. This must be the guy the manager mentioned last night. Nice to meet you, sir, Kachul added, glancing at Jin-Woo as he held out his hand. He really wanted to shake hands, but Jin-Woo just wasn't in the mood. After a moment of silence, Kachul's face turned bright red as he quickly pulled his hand back. I've already told you I'm not joining any guild. Jin-Woo looked confused. Oh no. That's not why I came, Kachul said, holding out a travel mug filled with some colorful swirly drink. Jin-Woo looked at the mug curiously. What's that? Kachul stood up a bit straighter, clearly proud of himself. Check out this green smoothie. I made it myself so you know it's super good, Kachul said with a grin. Jin-Woo was quiet for a moment but then took the drink, because he felt like he had no choice. Wait, did you really wait here since morning just to give me this? Jin-Woo asked curiously. He wondered why Kachul and the White Tiger Guild cared so much about his health. It's all for your well-being, Kachul replied cheerfully before bowing with a big smile and walking away. See ya later, Jin-Woo called out as Kachul left, waving the bottle in a friendly goodbye. Man, that guy's something else, he muttered to himself, shaking his head with a grin. Curious, Jin-Woo unscrewed the travel mug and peeked inside. He'd heard stories about top insurance salespeople winning clients over with fancy bottled drinks, but who tries to bribe someone with a homemade green smoothie? Weird or not, he wasn't about to toss it. Even if it were spiked, thanks to his detox buff, he was covered, so he shrugged and decided to give it a try. Jin-Woo decided to take a sip. As soon as the drink touched his lips, he smiled. Not bad, he said to himself. Just then he heard a familiar voice behind him. Boss? He turned around and saw Jin-Woo, who always had a big smile on his face. Jin-Woo nodded toward where Kachul had just left. Who was that guy? Jin-Woo shrugged. Just an insurance salesman. Jin-Woo nodded, totally satisfied with the answer. Jin-Woo looked around, taking in everything happening nearby. Where's your car? Jin-Ho asked, squinting around the empty parking lot. If he had seen Kachul, that meant he got there early too. But where was his weird van? Nowhere in sight. I parked it over there, Kachul said with a nod toward the edge of the lot. Why? Jin-Ho tilted his head, confused. Kachul shrugged. People around here are acting super strange. You know those murders that happened recently? No one knows who did them or why. Since I'm not from around here, everyone looks at me like I'm the killer or something. Jin-Woo listened, his eyes wide with excitement and a bit of fear. He bobbed his head slowly, taking it all in. The news had been filled with stories about a string of murders lately. Most of the victims were young women, and there had already been 2 cases this month alone. To make things even more unsettling, there was a strange black van hanging around the entrance of the apartment building. No wonder everyone in the neighborhood was on edge. Then Jin-Woo slurped down the last of his smoothie slurp.